every female over the age of 40 in America gets a free screening mammogram. Because they have found that most often breast cancer occurs after the age of 40. However, you have a family history, like a long family history of breast cancer, and you're 30 and you say, oh my gosh, all of my aunts and my mom, they all got breast cancer after their first child in their 30s. Your insurance might not cover a screening mammogram because epidemiologically, most women do not get diagnosed after the age of 40. Now, recently they have proven that if you have a high family history of breast cancer, you can qualify for a screening mammogram earlier, but this is the case beforehand. And so they use these methods to help plan and design when you get screened for what. So if you came to me and you said, I'm 25, my bones are hurting, I want to get a bone screening for osteoporosis, and you're 25, no one is going to cover it. You're going to have to pay out of pocket for that. In fact, they might not even let you get one because they say it's a waste of resource of a DEXA scan. Because epidemiologically, the earliest average that osteoporosis starts is after 45, after menopause. Now, there are some people who have early onset osteoporosis, and so without a documented family history, they're most likely not going to qualify for these screenings. So this is just about what is the greater good. So you've taken ethics before, and it talks about healthcare and the greater good. And then that's how we also set the guidelines. So I know for all of my females over the age of 40, I get a mammogram. All of my patients, male or female, over the age of 50, I refer them for a colonoscopy. I check their stool for blood. All of my males over the age of 50, I check their prostate for prostate cancer. And these are guidelines set based on epidemiologic methods. Now, if my patient comes in and says, my dad, my uncle, my brothers, they all got prostate cancer before, or colon cancer, by the time they're 40, I would send them to get a colonoscopy earlier. And I would work with I would call their insurance company, show them documented healthcare information about his family history to get it covered. And so, yes, there's extra steps involved, but because it doesn't fit in the epidemiologic mold, you have to take those extra steps to help screen someone for secondary prevention. All right. And then epidemiologists use rates and proportions to quantify levels of morbidity and mortality. So you hear this term morbidity and mortality all the time. Morbidity has to do with death. So what are the levels of death with certain things? And mortality, opposite. Morbidity is sequela. So what are the risks of complications from said disease? So morbidity issues with untreated hypertension, again, blindness, neurovascular changes, kidney failure, and heart failure. Mortality is actual death. And so they look at things. If morbidity and mortality isn't super high, sometimes the screening issues will not be addressed on a national level. So here's a really good example of it. Shingles. The FDA only approves the free or covered shingles vaccine for people ages 60 or over, even though people are still at risk age 50 or over. But because the morbidity and mortality rate isn't as high as when it happens after 60, and they can't justify the cost of vaccinating everyone after 50, they do it at 60 because the morbidity and mortality rate still stays somewhat low enough after 50 that they can justify not spending the money. So that's they quantify everything based on morbidity and mortality. There is a certain percentage of once it hits morbidity and mortality increased risk that they will start to implement. Different policies, and it's not just they're not trying to be cruel. A lot of this has to be based on resources and what can be reached to the greater masses, right? However, you can still get a shingles vaccine at 50. It's not going to be as easy to get one as when you're 60. You might have to call your insurance company and beg. You might have to pay for it. Sometimes people have to pay for their health care. And is that actually an unrealistic question to ask of people? No, it's not. You don't want to get shingles and you're nervous about it, then you might have to pay $67. And that's just life, because most likely you will get it after 60 but not 50. So that's kind of how it works. Alright, incidence rates and proportions measure the rate of new case development in a population. So when they talk about the incidence of the flu or the incidence of breast cancer, it's the rate of new development, whereas prevalence looks at the level of existing cases of a certain disease. So the prevalence of heart disease among African Americans is X percentage. The incidence since the start of, increasing the fruits and vegetables allotment in food stamps, maybe the incidence has gone down. This is a really good example. When they were concerned that vaccines were related to autism, specifically the MMR, they did a prevalence study and they said, okay, the prevalence of people getting autism who've been vaccinated is this. And they said it was because of mercury, right? They said there was mercury in the vaccines because there is a preservative that is an isomer of mercury called thimerosal. So it's not quite the same thing as mercury, but it's in there as a preservative. And they said, oh, this is what's causing it. So, okay, they took out the preservative, and the incidence of rates did not change. In fact, the incidence of rates of autism has continued to go up. Why? Because there's some other environmental factor that's increasing the rate of autism that has nothing to do with thimerosal. So they were able to rule out that thimerosal caused it because there was no incident rate change. So that is it on epidemiology. I hope this was just a really basic introduction on it. Epidemiology, if you plan to go and get your master's, you're definitely going to learn more about it. It's really, really important. And the nice thing about life is you can always look stuff back up. So don't be worried that you don't understand everything or you're not going to remember all this, because it takes time. Alright, so now let me just pause so I can switch to the next note. Okay, so now we're going to talk about vulnerable populations. Sorry, I'm in a weird part of my house because my baby is sleeping. Alright, so we're going to talk about vulnerable populations. So all countries have population subgroups that are more vulnerable to certain health threats than general populations. So when they talk about vulnerable population, they mean a population who are more likely to get a health threat because of some sort of disability. And what I mean by disability is a disability within their health. So for example, pregnant women are considered a vulnerable health threat to getting the measles, mumps, or rubella. Why? Because you cannot be vaccinated for measles, mumps, and rubella while you are pregnant until the 3rd trimester. Actually, no, I don't even think you can get. No, you can't even get vaccinated for it until after the baby's born. So, for example, you did not have proper immunity to measles, mumps, or rubella because you weren't vaccinated or your vaccination wore off prior to getting pregnant, and then you got pregnant, and then you're a school teacher, and there's these kids walking around with measles, mumps, and rubella, you're at risk, and so is your baby, because you cannot be vaccinated against it, and there's no treatment for it while you get it, and it can affect your fetus adversely. The same with Tdap, or with pertussis. You cannot get a booster, or you cannot get your vaccine for pertussis until the 3rd trimester, so they encourage all women to get their Tdap before getting pregnant. And then they'll do it again in the 3rd trimester, they will give you another booster, just to make sure. Because when your kid is born, your baby cannot get a Tdap until they're 6 months old. It's a 6-month shot, so they're vulnerable to pertussis. You don't want pertussis, whooping cough, it's really dangerous. Okay. Vulnerable populations are more likely to develop health problems as a result of exposure to risk or have worse outcomes for those health problems in the population as a whole. So diabetics, they are a vulnerable population. Why? Diabetics, especially those